How's it going, everyone? Ryan here with Off the Record Fantasy Football, the fantasy football podcast for you to dominate your league. Today, guys, we have 5 running backs that I believe have the potential to finish as RB1. There's some names on this list that you may not have considered, and there's some names that you might think are going to be good that I don't. So grab your pen, grab your paper, and let's go ahead and talk off the record. So to start, we will talk about a guy that I know many of you are looking at the top of your draft that I think you guys should be avoiding. That guy is Derrick Henry of the Tennessee Titans. I know he's a machine. He was a beast in previous years. And this past season, he put up almost 200 fantasy points in just 9 games, which is insane. But I don't think this is the year you want Derrick Henry. His efficiency metric, true yards per carry, absolutely plummeted last year. He finished in the top 10 in back-to-back seasons. Last year, he finished 43rd. And if you're not sure what true yards per carry is, that's fine. It factors out carries of 10 plus yards. So it values consistency. It values those guys that are constantly chunking 4, 5, 6 yards every carry. Derrick Henry's was ranked 43rd. He was not efficient at all. And I'm a big efficiency guy when it comes to fantasy football. I think you can never really predict touches, but if you can predict what a guy can do with the touch, more often than not, you're going to have a successful time with that. And Derrick Henry was just not very efficient last year. And I think losing A.J. Brown on the outside, well, I know everybody knows going through Derrick Henry, it's only going to make it even more obvious. Treylon Burks is not going to draw that much attention. Everybody knows where the ball is going, and it's going to Derrick Henry. And last season, he was on pace for over 500 touches. No running back in the history of the NFL has ever put up 500 touches in a season. I think the closest we've had in the modern era would be DeMarco Murray with the Cowboys. I believe he had 490, which is an insane amount of work. And especially coming off that injury in the foot where, it required surgery for a broken bone. I just don't think they're going to give him that same level of touches, that volume. And volume is king, right? Efficiency, I love efficiency because, you can't really predict how many touches a guy is going to get. But if a guy is just getting fed, bell cow type work, volume, you've always got a safe floor with volume. And I don't think Derrick Henry's going to have that safe floor anymore. I think they may have to use him less. I think he may not be the same Derrick Henry we saw last season, especially coming off the surgery. Now I know he's rehabbing and he's getting back on the field and ready to be out there again. I don't think it's going to be one of those injuries where he's just going to bounce right back and take over and get another 500 touches again this season. Not to mention his offensive line and supporting cast got much worse. At the end of last season, Pro Football Focus ranked the Tennessee Titans offensive line as 16th in the NFL. So it wasn't even that great, but it's better when what they rank it this season. They've lost right tackle David Quessenberry. They lost left guard Roger Saffold. They are now ranked 27th by Pro Football Focus going into this season. That is not going to help the efficiency metric. That is not going to help their passing game. That is not going to help them find holes. Derrick Henry, I think, had an average of 0.6 yards before contact or something like that. I can't remember the exact stat, but it was minuscule, right? So they're not going to open up holes better for him this season than they did last season. They didn't do a great job last season either. So Derrick Henry's a guy I'm fading. He's the only guy we'll talk about as, I guess, an honorable mention, but he's not really an honorable mention because I'm saying to stay away from him because he's currently ranked, 3rd overall on Sleeper. And if I've got the 3rd pick, I got 5 guys for you here. At least 3 of them are going to be available. That's just the way it works. So without further ado, let's get into our top 5. At number 5, I have Indianapolis Colts running back Jonathan Taylor. I think, he's amazing. He's great. He's the guy on his offense. I think he's not the number 1 guy as far as fantasy upside is concerned. I know he's number 1 overall, and I'm not going to criticize that because he is the safest. But last season, he put up the least point per game of a fantasy running back 1 since 2015 in Devontae Freeman. And it took Jonathan Taylor 20 touchdowns to get there. I think the workload is there. I think he's a great runner. I think he's a beast. I just don't see that RB1 back-to-back upside, especially with, like I said, 20 touchdowns and fewest points per game. So it was kind of a culmination of everything went right for him last season. Now he could break out this season even more so than last season and just get more yards and catches and touches and whatnot. But I just don't see him as the most valuable upside pick. He's the safest floor. He's got the highest floor, right? If Jonathan Taylor finishes at RB5 and you took him at first overall, you're not going to be upset. That's not going to be the reason you lost your league, or maybe you didn't do as well as you hoped, right? If he finishes RB5, you're safe there. And that's probably his floor. So I wouldn't be too worried about that. But he's number 5 on this list. At number 4, we have Cincinnati Bengals running back Joe Mixon. After an injury plague start to his career, after being held out, and I know that one year he had migraines, he finishes RB3 last year, which was what everybody had been banking on the previous years. The Bengals improved their offensive line this season as well, and they should provide better blocking than the 33rd best run blocking for Joe Mixon. That's a stat that grades run blocking when a certain runner is running, right? So Joe Mixon finished 33rd, which means 32 running backs got better run blocking than he did. He also faced a ton of stacked boxes, believe it or not. He got a ton of carries into stacked boxes. I don't know if that was just because teams didn't adjust enough to the pass or they were just saying they were daring Joe Burrow to beat him through the air, but you've got to respect that passing game now. I don't know why teams would stack the box so much against the Bengals. Maybe it's because they wanted to blitz and get to Burrow because he was the most sacked quarterback. And that was just kind of a detriment to Joe Mixon. But I don't see any reason why they would try and stack the box against the Bengals this year. The Bengals should be facing too high safety looks very, very often. They were so explosive. Joe Mixon is going to benefit from those. If he sees lighter boxes, he is going to feast. Last year's RB1 has a good chance, a really, really good chance on a high-powered offense to be RB1. But we've got a guy on an even more high-powered offense here at number 3. That running back at 3, Chargers running back Austin Eckler. I think this offense will be the highest powered, most explosive, most dynamic offense in the NFL. Justin Herbert threw for 5,000 plus yards last season. I see him going for it again. It's really not that, it's not a realm of possibility. They upgraded at tight end and they brought back all of their key starters for the most part. So continuity is key for me. I love when I can just know what I'm going to get with a guy. I'm not risking anything. I'm not banking on a ridiculous scenario for it to hit. We saw what Eckler could be last season as RB2 overall. He can definitely do that again. He's got such good pass catching upside. That's really where his value comes. In fantasy football, a target, not even a catch, but a target is worth on average 1 full fantasy point higher than a carry. That is an insane difference. 1 full fantasy point of difference per target, not even catch. Austin Eckler is one of the best pass catching backs in a pass heavy offense. Look for Eckler to get another 70, 80, 90 targets. Who knows? He's in that range, and that's a ton of projected fantasy points for him there. He's in that high powered offense. Like I said, they love to pass, and usually that's a reason to stay away. For example, the Buffalo Bills or the Kansas City Chiefs don't really want their running back because they don't use them enough. But Eckler doesn't have the competition for touches like those other teams' backfields have. He's got Isaiah Spiller, who's a rookie, who's had fumble problems. Now he's going to get a good amount of work, but Eckler's not getting challenged for RB1 workhorse role. He finished 1.5 points per game behind Jonathan Taylor last season. So he was right there with him. A little bit more, as far as yards, a couple more touchdowns, and I think the scenario's there. Eckler can be RB1. He was RB2, 1.5 points per game behind last year's RB1. We'll see. I think he can bust out, and I think he's going to have a great, great season. So he's one of those guys that I know I think he's going like 5th or something like that. He might be going after a wide receiver. So if you're drafting at 4 or 5 in your draft, you'd be so happy to get a guy like Austin Eckler. Next on this list, we have number 2, Minnesota Vikings running back Dalvin Cook. Dalvin Cook is one of my favorite players, and while I know he always misses 2 to 3 games with injury, I think that might be a bit different this season. He's reportedly being used as a wide receiver more, and as I just talked about with Eckler, targets are worth more than carries. If they use him in a Deebo Samuel role, you are going to see an absolute monster Last season, he was the second running back off the board after finishing as RB2 the prior season. Yes, last season wasn't nearly as good, but that's because he had such a massive decrease in touchdowns. And that wasn't any kind of workload change or schematic change. That was just unlucky. Back-to-back double-digit seasons before last season where he only finished with single-digit touchdowns. He's had the same amount of goal line carries all 3 years. He gets the same amount of work. He is that lead back. There's nobody challenging him. Madison will step in if he does go down, but I don't think he's going to get banged up as much. Like I said, if he's being used as a wide receiver, it's a lot better to get tackled by those corners and safeties than it is to get tackled by defensive tackles and linebackers. It's just less aggressive hitting. And I understand that, football's still a violent sport, but if he's not getting landed on by 325, 350 pound dudes, that's got to be better for the body. And especially if he can just waltz out of bounds because he's being used as a wide receiver in bunch formats, that's fantastic. And just 2 seasons ago, when he finishes RB2, he actually finished number 1 in expected fantasy points per game. So the potential's there. We've seen it. Like I said, I love guys that I know what's going to happen. That's why I'm out on a guy like Derrick Henry. We have no idea what's going to happen there. Antonio Gibson. We have no idea how that backfield is going to look now with Brian Robinson. I think with Dalvin Cook, it's his backfield. This offense, they said, is going to be more pass happy and more pass heavy. And he's going to be used as a receiver. So I think that's just only a benefit to him. And like I said, less injury risk. Yes, he may still get injured. You might want to snag Madison at the end. I know you don't want to handcuff your own running back, but at this point, we can kind of predict that he might miss a game or two, but he's never really let it affect his performance. I think Dalvin Cook is poised if they use him like they used Deebo Samuel and Cordero Patterson last year. The talent is there for Dalvin Cook. He's got such a good shot at being RB1, but not as good as the next guy on this list. At number 1 for my chance to finish as RB1 is Christian McCaffrey. And before you guys freak out about his injuries, and he's missed the last 2 seasons, basically he's only played 10 out of the last 32 games. I get it. His injuries, though, haven't been severe. They haven't required surgery. Most of the time, he's been held out of coming back because by the time he was healthy again, the Panthers were already way out of it. No hope. But I'm betting that Baker Mayfield coming in gives them more stability at quarterback, means they're going to be more competitive. They are going to protect him more. They plan on giving him way less work in practice and maybe switching up his role in the offense. I know they brought in Donta Foreman, who may get some touches in those more gritty areas, but that's a good thing for Christian McCaffrey. He'll still get those goal line touches. He'll still get those touches inside the 20. It's between the 20s that those touches aren't very valuable. They may use him there, but they may also spare him on 3rd and 1. They might bring in Devonta Foreman because he's that big, powerful back and just pound him into the back of the line on 3rd and 1 from the 40. And I think McCaffrey is going to see a bit of a role shift where he's not going to be used as the 90% of snaps guy, but he's still going to be so efficient. We know Christian McCaffrey is a beast. When he finished as RB1 back in 2019, he produced 60 more fantasy points than Jonathan Taylor did this past season. 60 more fantasy points and half-point PPR. That is an insane amount of points over 17, or actually it was 16 games back then. So that's insane. The fact that, I know Jonathan Taylor is RB1 last year and we have this recency bias, but when Christian McCaffrey is on the field, he is a fantasy cheat code. I mean, we've never seen a guy like this in fantasy. I mean, he had 100 catches and over 1,000 rushing. It was insane. That 2019 season, he was insane. He is the guy on that offense. You don't have to worry about him getting vultured. Maybe he does, but I mean, a small decrease in points per game, even if only puts up 60 fewer points, you're not going to be upset taking him at RB2, which is where he's currently going. The Panthers also improved their offensive line. They finished 51st last season, 51st best for him in run blocking. When Christian McCaffrey finished as RB1, they were 6th best. I'm looking for them to get back to that. Matt Rule is on the hot seat. They're going to need to use their star player. Him and DJ Moore get a big boost from Baker Mayfield. I think DJ Moore more so than McCaffrey. Baker Mayfield is not going to stint McCaffrey's workload. It's not like they brought in some scrambling quarterback, some dual threat guy. Baker Mayfield is a gunslinger. He's a pocket passer, and don't think he's going to pass up the check down for something further downfield. I know that him and DJ Moore are going to have that deep ball connection. So DJ Moore is going to be very, I think, boom or bust. He's going to have a lot of volume, I think, though, too. So I think his floor is going to be safe. He's going to have that boom. I'm really in on DJ Moore after this trade. But with Christian McCaffrey, he sees about 20 to 24% of targets out of the backfield. Baker Mayfield over his career has thrown about 20.1% of his passes to running backs. 370 of his 1,838 career pass attempts have gone to running backs. There's no reason I see that changing. This scheme is going to be even more friendly for him to throw to Christian McCaffrey, and I'm super excited about it. I know the injuries are a concern, and if you've had him in any of the either previous seasons, you may be burned a bit. But both of those seasons, he had injuries that are incredibly common at the position. He had never missed a game except for once in college before 2020, and they shut him down. He finished with an AC joint and a sprained ankle or a hamstring, and then last season was I think of the sprained ankle, and those are just common injuries. A high ankle sprain is incredibly common for a running back. So I think he's healthy, and it's not like Saquon where he's had to rehab an ACL tear, right? Nothing's required surgery. It's just required rest. And with the rumors and the talk and the chatter that they're going to use him a bit differently in practice, I'm all in on Christian McCaffrey this year. I'm very excited about it. But any of these five guys, I think if you get them in the first round, you're walking away as a happy camper. Going into the second round, you've got a multitude of opportunity to take maybe a second running back, those DeAndre Swifts, those, taking a shot on Saquon. You can get those guys there. I know Joe Mixon's going at the back half of the first round. If you're picking number 8, Joe Mixon might be there. Dalvin Cook could be there. I know Dalvin Cook's ranked 8th, but if you've got guys that are like, oh, he was bad last season and I'm worried about the injuries. I guess I can say that, yes, injuries play a factor, but you got to look at what he's going to do on the field. We have to project what they're going to do when they're on the field. You can't really project injuries, and you never know, right? Like I said, Joe Mixon was injured until he wasn't. Austin Eckler was always injured until he wasn't. So we're looking at guys here that, the community is not worried about at all, that do have a history of injuries. But because they were good last season and they were healthy last season, nobody bats an eye. But McCaffrey, he gets simple injuries that are very common at the position, is being overlooked, and nobody's going to touch him with a 10-foot pole. Yet Derrick Henry's just going to be this monster who's going to finish with 500 touches again and the most volume in NFL history and just blitz his way on low efficiency to RB1. I don't see it. I just don't see it. All of these guys fit the age profile. All of these guys have massive upside. All of these guys are guaranteed work. And not only are they guaranteed work, but they're efficient with the work they're given. These are my 5 guys. These are the guys I love this season. Any of these 5 running backs, I think, could bust out and finish in the top 5, let alone RB1. Just to recap, Jonathan Taylor at 5, I think he's the safest, and I think that's why he's going as number 1 off the board. Very good season last season. I don't think when everybody's healthy and performing to the level they can that he's RB1 this year, but I think he does have a chance to repeat it. At 4, we have Joe Mixon. He finishes RB3 last season. Surprisingly faced a good amount of stacked boxes. They improved the offensive line. So I think Mixon is going to just absolutely feast as teams need to respect Jamar Chase and T. Higgins more. And if Burrow's not sacked as much, that's going to be better for Joe Mixon because he's going to get those touches more often. Instead of 2nd and 14, it'll be 2nd and 6, and they can, actually hand the ball off. At 3, we've got Austin Eckler of the Chargers. He just has such tremendous pass catching upside. He's currently going as RB3 off the board. Obviously, like I said, Jonathan Taylor is RB1. I believe Mixon is like RB7. Eckler's got that pass catching upside in a high powered offense that's retaining all the key pieces. I love consistency. I love what you're going to get. Eckler looks real good. This is probably the last season for Eckler. He's starting to approach that area where running backs start to decline. So keep that in mind. But I still think he's got it for one more season. Number 2, we've got Dalvin Cook. I believe he's going 6th overall off the board. I believe he's 4th as in terms of running backs. I love the idea that he's going to be used as a pass catcher. I mean, he's got the ability to catch the ball. He's a great receiver out of the backfield, and he's got all the touches in the world. Mike Zimmer's gone. I know they had a great pace of play, but even if they continue with what they did last season and just kind of change their identity a bit, maybe trying to pass a bit more, Justin Jefferson is going to be a beneficiary. And I think Dalvin Cook will be a beneficiary and maybe steal some targets away from a guy like Adam Thielen, who has been really declining lately. And then at number 1, we have Christian McCaffrey, currently going as RB2. He's an absolute fantasy cheat code when he's on the field. And if you've got that second overall pick and you're not sure where to go, I think you just got to swing on it. You can get a good running back in the second round that you feel comfortable with. Aaron Jones, like I said, Saquon, perhaps, a guy you feel comfortable playing as an RB1 in case McCaffrey does go down. But I don't see injuries as that big of a concern. I think they're going to bubble wrap him this season. They've been minor injuries. They've not required surgery. I'm looking at Christian McCaffrey to be that guy this year. I think he's going to bounce back in a big way. But those are my top 5 running backs to finish RB1. Who do you guys have? Let me know on Twitter at RyeBreadSN, RyeBreadsN. Feel free to DM me and let me know your thoughts on the situation. I'd love to interact with you guys. And if you guys feel differently about any of these guys or like Derrick Henry or think I'm forgetting somebody, let me know and I can touch on them as the summer goes on. But guys, thank you so much for listening. Make sure to subscribe if you enjoyed it, and I will see you guys in the next one.